We're going to do the flip of the PowerPoint, so that's why she's here. I want to thank the organizers of this meeting for inviting the Council on Competitiveness to participate. I'm Cynthia McIntyre, and I'm the Senior Vice President for High Performance Computing. Trust me, I won't talk about that, for the Council. I do several things beyond high performance computing. I also have a focus, international focus, in particular the Middle East. And I spent probably about a month ago, about 2 to 3 weeks in the United Arab Emirates, talking to them about economic development, new venture creation, how to enable their population to move into new businesses, be they technological or not. And here I am today in Alabama talking about similar things. So let me start by saying this is my title. It's about turning competitive disadvantage into collaborative advantage. And the Council has engaged over the past 3 to 4 years in a study, and I will talk about some of the results of the study in this PowerPoint that apply to what you're doing here in Alabama. But first, a little bit about the Council. We were founded in 1986 by John Young, who at the time was the CEO of Hewlett-Packard. He has served as a chair for an industrial competitiveness study that Ronald Reagan had commissioned back in the 80s. And some of you recall that time. The U.S. was under tremendous economic stress. Japan was rising in ascension as a major economic power, and there were some trade issues between the U.S. and Japan at that time, some unfair trade practices with respect to computer chips. And so part of that dynamic spurred the study, and as a result of the study and the outcomes of that, John Young decided to start a not-for-profit organization. We are nonpartisan and tripartite in our membership. Our members are CEOs of major corporations, university presidents, and labor leaders. We are unique in the United States through our tripartite membership. We have about 170 members, and we focus on public policy. We set action agendas, and we drive towards U.S. productivity growth, high living standards, and success in the global marketplace. And as I said, our members come from industry, academia, and organized labor. We leverage the convening power of our membership to discuss issues that affect their productivity, and we operate at the level of the national interest, not so much at the state interest, although sometimes those two things align. And we are very proactively engaged in all perspectives and forge critical partnerships. Look for public-private partnerships to advance productivity. This is a map, satellite map of the U.S. You can see the bright areas are the high-density living environments in the U.S. Those that are dark are less populated. And so what I want to talk about today is the work that we most recently published. It's called Collaborate. And I've got only one copy of it here, but you can certainly download it for free on our website. I'll talk about it. It's based on some work that we did initially around 1999 with Michael Porter, who was mentioned earlier. Michael Porter is a professor at Harvard, and he did the clusters of innovation study in that time frame. We focus on regions in this work. We have a regional innovation initiative in the Council that my colleague Sam Lycan oversees. He's the vice president for that area. And we define regions as fundamentally labor markets. There's no centralized financial authority in a region. It's not like a city or a county that has some financial authority. And it tends to lack an identity. So it's more defined by the labor market than not. And the Council has concluded that competing in the global economy forces regions to act like regions. Now, what does that mean? That regions need to think, plan, and act regionally. Acting regionally means proceeding with a strategy focused on long-range uses of assets to enhance competitiveness. And those assets can be physical assets, human assets that must be brought to bear on problems. Effective regional leadership is key for enabling regions to act like regions. Regional leadership is fundamentally different from other leadership because regions have no defined boundaries. Within this study, we look at Danville, Louisville, Denver, Silicon Valley, and Western Michigan Strategic Alliance. And we look at those regions to understand how they have been able to advance economic strategies for their benefit. The regions are diverse. Some of them are very high tech, Silicon Valley. Danville is very depressed area and looks more like Wilcox, or used to look more like Wilcox than not. Louisville is very diverse. It's a very large metropolitan region and has a very interesting history about its regionalism, which was really driven by their decision to network and broaden their public education system beyond the locale to other regions and to neighboring regions, and to make it a much more integrated public school system. And that drove, because they decided to do that as a body, they then said, if we were able to do this for our public school systems, we can do more for the region since we are already networked together. They embrace innovative regional structures. They focus on longevity and success, and they create a regional mindset. Now, there are 3 C's for regional collaboration. There's the need for conversation, and we've heard that here. And we've seen in the videos that leaders have gotten together to begin to discuss problems and potential solutions. So for the new knowledge-based economies, you need a network of leaders to talk about how do we move forward together. The ability to collaborate, to talk, and think strategically together is a vital source of competitive advantage and organizational effectiveness. There needs to be connection, close cooperation within multidisciplinary teams, and we say that that's more academician speak than not. But when I talk about multidisciplinary teams, I'm talking about government leaders, business leaders, utilities, social networks or social organizations, bank leadership. All of these have to come together and talk about the problems in the region. Not just the business leaders, but the social leaders and the university and the public school system leaders, because you all share the same environment and you all have the same problems, and you have to develop shared solutions. And then you have to do capacity building. The new tasks of regional leadership are to tell the region's story. And you have to develop that story as a group. What is our history and where do we want to get to? And we have to share that story, and we have to tell that story. The leaders have to tell the story to those that they are leading. This is our story. You need to take it as part of my chamber to your community, as part of the religious community's outreach to their members. This is our story, and I share this every Sunday in my message, starting out how we are a broad community. So everyone has to have the region's story told. The right people at the table to do the right things. You need to have education leaders as part of your discussion. Higher education, community colleges, high schools, principals, elementary school principals, everyone has to be involved in the discussion and develop the narrative, develop the story about the region, about how we problem solve to move to the next level. Getting people to the table, however, is not an end in itself. You've got to come out with a plan and action to move the community together. Worry less about defining your region and more about enabling it. Establish indicators and metrics. Regional leaders need metrics and indicators tied to decision-making process, to measurable goals created through organized regional conversations. So this is a long-term, intense process. It's not something we do every 6 months, once a year. It's going to take very focused regional leaders to move, discuss an agenda for the region, to reach out to federal government, to have them come to the table, for the state government to come to the table, in order for everyone to understand where the region is trying to go and how they can get there, the resources they need, the expertise they need. Now, sometimes regions are larger than the state. Oftentimes, depending upon the dynamics, the economics of the region is larger than just the state. It may be neighboring states that play in. How do you bridge that issue? How do you bring the governors together to inform them about the need? The business leaders, the religious leaders, the educational leaders can have that connection to those state offices to bring those people to bear on the problem. Building community confidence requires publicly setting, tracking, and meeting real, meaningful, measurable objectives. And all of you will do that as you move forward from this day, defining what the problems are, what the solutions are that you're going to have for Alabama on health and economic development. You'll set these goals. Produce regional value, better value through pooled resources. It's sort of economic gardening, is the idea that small and local companies are the source of jobs and wealth, and regions need to create nurturing environments for new companies. Build an innovation ecosystem. To compete successfully, every region needs a cross-fertilization innovation ecosystem that goes beyond producing discrete innovations to systemic innovations. Innovation occurs in the knowledge economy at the intersection of disciplines. And you need an ongoing intermediary organization. So that may be that the regional leaders that come together call themselves X, whatever that is, and that we're going to meet every 2 weeks to advance this issue and bring our members along as we develop our thinking. Characteristics of effective leadership structures are listed here, the local versus the regional. I think the most important piece here is that the organizational structure, local is hierarchical, regional is flat and networked, okay? That the power structure in local is central command, few leaders, in regional, shared by many leaders. And at the very bottom, the lead sector in the local community is typically public, a mayor, whomever, it's political. In a regional structure or an engagement, you're going to find that the lead sector will be the private sector. And the private sector will then reach out to the public sector and bring them in. So you want your business leaders there. You want your religious leaders there. You want your private schools there, leading for regional advantage. The other table that I want to show that's also in the publication are the qualities of individual regional leaders. And this is what we have found, that the mindset for the regional leader is collaborative, that the outcome is systemic excellence, that the breadth of vision is the entire system, the leadership style is consensus building. That is wonderful, but sometimes consensus can't be gotten, and that makes it very difficult. And I know that through our work, with our tripartite membership, it's not always easy to get consensus. It's best to do that, but sometimes you can't. And sometimes you're going to have to make a decision that you think is in the best interest, even though you don't have total consensus. The authority, the basis of authority in a regional leadership environment is earned by action, not earned by reputation. The key personality trait is outgoing, and that can be true, I'm sure, of local leaders. And the outlook is one that is global, that we must be competitive in the global marketplace. Closing, these are a few things that I leave for you to look at. I think that the problems that have been discussed here are opportunities. The problems that we heard about in the videos are also opportunities. And as I was saying, as we were forming, that you have organizations here. The University of Alabama at Birmingham has medical schools, nursing school. You also have a business school. There are opportunities for students to help communities problem solve and find solutions. Not always will you need to bring an outside consultant to facilitate dialogue. Your regional leaders have been very good in problem solving themselves, in asking the right questions and getting to shared answers. And so I think engaging your regional leadership is the most effective way to bring about change. Thank you.